Good evening, everyone. Welcome to A World Awakening. I'm Erin Bush, and our lovely Queen of High Strangeness is gallivanting across Scotland, having an absolute blast. Talked to her a little bit yesterday. I was down with her dad in Winter Garden, and in true Annie fashion, she is so overwhelmed with joy and happiness at the time that she's having that she just cries. So she's having an absolute blast. She's really enjoying it. And it's an opportunity I know that she will be so glad to have been a part of. So I'm really excited to be stepping in for her again tonight. Haven't seen you all in a while. And I'm really excited about tonight's guest. My guest tonight is my dear friend, Tess Rooney. A little background on how Mary and I know each other. She also lives in St. Augustine. She's actually basically across the street from me. And right around the time COVID started, I was still kind of learning about, the spiritual path and my journey and what that was looking like. And I was given this opportunity to join a women's group where we worked within the different elements to, release things, call things in, manifest things. And it was something that was really powerful when you have a group of women working on that together. And Mary was also a part of that. So we got to know each other then. And then, we stayed in touch when that space closed. And then I decided to quit my job. So I get a lot of questions about how did I end up here? How did I end up, working with Andrea and the paranormal and some of these things I've really been lucky enough to be able to do over the last few months. And Tess has been a really big part of that for me. So, during COVID, we had this great resignation, as they're calling it. People were leaving their jobs in droves. And I had reached a point in my career with law that I just couldn't do it anymore. Energetically, it was destroying my soul. It's very difficult to be a paralegal as a sensitive when you're dealing with other people's stuff all the time. No one goes to lawyers because they're happy. So, I was given the opportunity to get out. I left. My last day was almost a year ago next week. But I didn't know what I was going to be doing or what I was going to be jumping into next. I really didn't know. I just wanted to trust the universe and see where it led me. So my last week of work, Mary reached out to me. Mary is a published author. She published Heart Value last year, which I actually have here. Great book. And then she also has her own podcast called True Stride. And she was looking for someone to kind of just freelance help her with some administrative things. And she was kind of on the tail end of getting the book done. So there was a lot going on, So not knowing a lot about her book, I think I started working for her like the week after I quit my job. And as I started learning about what she was writing about, I was just blown away. So Mary really, Mary's got a corporate background. And through that, she and I'll have her explain all of this, but she got to a point where she was needing to find joy in her life. And she was, starting to write about these experiences and these things that she learned and these different techniques and tools and things that she wanted people to understand. And one of the biggest ones for me was being able to choose again, right? Choose your path differently, choose a different job, go to a different state. But we always have the power to choose again. And I was really struggling with that. I had always been in a corporate type job. I had always been either a paralegal or an executive assistant. I've been doing that 20 years. And I just assumed I would be on that path forever. I mean, I used to tell the lawyer that I worked for, I'm like, oh, I'll just work for you until I die, because, growing up, it was, you work, you go to school, you learn, you work, you get married, you have kids, you do the thing. But where is the time where we get to learn that we get to choose different options for ourselves in our lives, right? I'd really reached a crossroads. I was, really diving into the spiritual work. I had started doing Reiki during COVID for people, and really diving into the metaphysical world. And those two things, law and the spiritual world, just didn't align for me anymore. I could not make them mesh. So I had to get out. And so learning that it was okay to choose again, like to be able to make those decisions for myself and be okay with that, not caring about disappointing other people, not really caring what my path looked like. But I was onto something, you know. I mean, she and I started working together. I started learning about, you know, being able to choose again. And the other thing she talks about is what she calls joy frequency. Like, where do you find the joy in your life? That was another big one for me. I had really stopped enjoying my life. I mean, I live in Florida. I live on the beach. So does she. But I would go to work. You know, I worked 40 miles away from my office. So I was, you know, basically out of the house 11, 12 hours every day. By the time I got home, I was so gassed, I didn't have the energy to do anything fun. So in working with her, you know, I got to learn about podcasting and some about what it looks like to put a book together and birth a book, as she calls it. But bigger than that, a lot of what she was writing about and podcasting about was these things that I certainly needed to hear. So what she was writing about and talking about, I was living it in real time the whole time I worked for her. And so really getting to spend time with her energy is amazing. You'll find out here in a minute. I realized I was onto something, that I had finally, for the first time in 42 years, made decisions for myself, not based off what I should be doing, but what did I want to do? And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew it was going to be something spiritual, but I just really decided to let the universe help me out. And I'm a massive control freak. I am probably a pretty typical type A person. But it wasn't working for me anymore. You know, I was burnt out. I was exhausted. And through working with her, I started to get that back. You know, I started finding the joy in my life and, you know, finding the joy in my day. And then, you know, obviously I met Andrea and Roger last September, and the rest is sort of history. But I feel like in putting myself first and my own personal needs first, I started, you know, as Andrea would say, I just like flipped on my back and started to float. I stopped being a salmon and stopped trying to swim upstream. And the more I was swimming upstream, the less happy I was. And I learned if I just flipped on my back and floated and trusted the universe and what it was trying to guide me towards, it's been incredible. I mean, I've had some amazing experiences. I've learned so many new things, you know, as far as this kind of stuff, you know, podcasting, streaming live, what it's like to work with people like Andrea and Roger at events, and, you know, working on social media posting for people. It's just opened a massively huge new door for me. And I completely have changed the direction of what my life looks like. And I owe a lot of that to her. So without further ado, I would love to bring on Miss Mary Tess.
Yay!
Hi, Sunshine.
How are you guys? I'm so psyched to be here. Thank you for having me.
We're so excited to have you. I think the timing of this is awesome because so many people are leaving their jobs, or they've just had enough. Yeah. And I feel like so much of what you're teaching and trying to get people to understand is that that's okay to do that. You know, don't know a lot of other people who are teaching and preaching and talking about how important that choice is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we don't talk about the fact that we evolve, right? I mean, right. And we don't allow ourselves, you know, the opportunity to say, you know what, I did want that last week, but I just had this like epiphany. I don't want it anymore. Or, you know, it's like we don't give ourselves the permission or freedom to choose again. Yes. And it's so ridiculous. Like I was just talking to a girlfriend who is in a relationship, and, you know, we also are always trying to really understand what's true to ourselves, because we've put up these walls or these veils for how we should be, or these people pleasing. And so anyway, she's in this new relationship, and the guy said something to her, and she like went into this mode of people pleasing, and she didn't want to pressure him. And so she said, yeah, no, absolutely. But then I was so proud of her, because like a day later, after it didn't sit right with her, right, she felt like, ooh, you know what? I said that, but do I really feel that way? Do I feel that way? Am I going to regret this? And so she had the courage to go back to him and say, hey, like, I know I said this, and I don't exactly know why I said it. I think I didn't want to pressure you or disappoint you, but this is how I really feel. And I just want you to be aware of it. And he goes, oh my God, I'm so glad you told me, because otherwise I didn't see that perspective. And then he was able to make a different choice, and they kind of came together in such a more like intimate way, because they were both being honest about what was happening. But it's so often we just, to your point, we do not give ourselves the permission to like choose again, or present ourselves and say, this is how I feel, and see where the chips lie, right? Because we won't know unless we put ourselves out there in that vulnerable way, which is scary a lot of the times, because that's not how we were conditioned.
No, and it's, we live in a world where it's all about, status and how hard, basically working yourself to death is a status symbol somehow, right? I mean, I know you've done that. I did that my whole career. And what did I get out of it other than massive unhappiness, crazy amounts of stress, sleepless nights, and, 47 cups of coffee every day just to like keep functioning as a normal human being. And I think more people, people just don't give themselves the permission to think differently or choose a different path, because, you feel like once you're on it, you're supposed to just stay on that train.
Yeah.
Whether that's a societal thing or a family thing, or just, just the nature of the environment that we live in. But I don't think until I started working with you, I had no idea how important that was. But then also to start embracing that is difficult.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's so out of your norm.
Well, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I vividly remember, right, you were so jazzed about this ghost tour and paranormal experience that you were going to go on. But I was in like a crunch mode. So I think your automatic reaction was, well, it's only from this hour to this hour. I can probably work in a couple hours. And I kind of chuckled and said, like, okay, you're making an investment in yourself. It clearly brings you joy. Like, no, you have to like all out, just be present. And can you imagine, like, maybe you wouldn't have met Andrea on the bench if you were running in and out, trying to do a meeting with me or help me with something. Like, you don't know what's possible unless you're really present in that joy. And so thank God you made that choice. And thank God, I'm on my path to say like, no, I'm not putting that on you, because that's not, that's not fair. But if I was in corporate America and if I had a deadline, I would have been like, okay, damn Skippy, like help me out. I got to meet my deadline. So
don't care what you got going on. You got to help me here.
Yeah. So there is that, like, we put so much pressure on ourselves, but if we can kind of check out of that ego, or check out of, what's expected, right? It's like, then what's possible, and how can we show up differently? I think that's the big thing, right? Is then you're open to invite in what really brings you joy, or what really serves you and what aligns with you, versus, all right, like I have to do this, but now I'm on a schedule and I have to carve out an hour to do that. And then you're distracted, you're not present. And so you're missing the full joy experience too.
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, and you watched me. It was funny too for you, because you were the first person that I worked for where it wasn't a corporate environment, but I was still so in that mindset. And sometimes you would just like shake your head at me and be like, you don't work there anymore.
Yeah.
Because the people pleasing thing, and I think that for so many people is a really big struggle. I mean, I know it's something, I've come a long way with, but I still have a lot more work to do. But that's just how we've been programmed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know for me if it's like part of being the oldest child, or, there's probably some other underlying things that kind of make me feel that way. But you were kind of the first person to sit me down and be like, no.
Yeah.
That event, we're talking about this strange escapes event where I met Andrea and Roger last fall and how all this kind of unfolded. I was really battling her, like, oh, I could just not go, or I could just, and she was like, Mary's like, no, you got to go. You got to do this. But I really struggled with that, because I felt like I should have stepped in for the decisions, but it was, or for the deadlines for you. But it was so nice to have someone who basically like shook me and was like, what the hell are you doing? This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Enjoy the hell out of it. We'll catch up when you get back. And I just never had that, where somebody let me put myself first for once, and in spite of what you had going on,
Yeah. Well, and that's a lot, You were so cute picking up my book. Thank you, the Heart Value book. But that's a lot about, the heart value relationships, like that energetic and emotional connection. When you have that with someone, and you and I definitely have it, like you truly want what is best for them, even if it's going to, maybe have a deadline setback or whatever for yourself. Cause you're just like, no, like that's like, if you have that connection with someone, you just wholeheartedly, right? You value them. So yes. Heart value, it's like you see me, you're trying to support me and my dreams and my heart value, and I see you. And so we can both elevate each other's joy and frequency and game, because then if we fill up our cup with those things that invigorate us outside of the, work, quote unquote, then we have so much more to give. And there's so many people that don't get that, right? It's like, we just think, okay, these are the expectations and I have to work a certain amount of hours, or I have to pay my dues, or it's like we get so caught up in these completely made up rules. Like they are made up rules.
They are made up.
Completely made up.
Whoever started that, I'd like to punch in the face.
I don't know. I really don't. I'm like, I like at one point, I think when I was doing research on the book, I like, where is this whole 9 to 5? Where did this is a made up thing. And I get energized, or I get, optimistic when I see different companies that are switching that mentality, or just exploring other avenues, because it's like, you want people to be productive and contributors and healthy and happy and whole. And, if we, I always laugh because it's like so many corporations, you say 9 to 5, but trust me, we both worked way more than 9 to 5. And then that's not even counting the emotional sort of, like heaviness that we bring home with us too, right? So you can't even just decompress that. You're always like doing checklists, or you can be in the shower and go, oh, you know what? I need to remember to do that. So, so it's like, how do you shift gears and release those made up rules so that we can make up rules for ourselves that do align and that feel really good, and then help us balance and show up for people in new ways?
Yeah. Well, I'd love for you to tell, give, because you're new for our audience here. I'd love for you to kind of, just tell your story and how you ended up writing this book and doing this podcast, and, having your 2 crazy, amazing German Shepherds that, just living a different, you completely did this. I mean, you did this well before I did, but you not only decided to change your life's path, but then you decided to write a book and do a weekly podcast about it. So if you want, take as much time as you want.
Well, okay. First, thank you so much. I really appreciate you and Andrea having me on, and just, I love witnessing both of your journeys and how you share your heart value with this world. It's a beautiful and very, energizing thing. So I'm grateful to be part of it. And this community, like how cool is everyone watching? And so again, I feel very blessed to be among each and every one of you. So my story is, I worked in corporate America for decades, and my last role was as a head of communications for an advertising company. And I was at that company for almost 17 years, and I had a great gig. Like the company when I started back in 2002 had a very family feel, and I grew up in that company through the ranks. And so I had a lot of relationships that were heart value relationships, right? We completely had each other's back and just really helped each other out and elevated each other's game. And then, life sort of evolves and we evolve with it. And at one point I just kind of was like, all right, the company's changed and I've changed. And does this work, light me up? And then at the same time, as I'm kind of evaluating my career, I also had a marriage that completely, went kaput, for lack of a better word. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I had been someone who had a vision of my life that I would be a stay-at-home mom for my children. And so part of the reason I worked as hard as I did when I was in corporate America is because I thought I wanted to be a contributor to my family and my children that I envisioned. And so what better way for me to get as far as I can and make as much money in the corporate world before I had them. And so it seemed like a great idea, right? And then I get married and I think I'm like, okay, great, we're going to go on the kid track. And then we have a miscarriage and then the marriage like implodes. And then all of a sudden I'm like 37, 38. We probably got divorced when I was 39. And I'm like, oh my God, like what if the kids and the husband are not in the cards for me right now, and I really wanted that family unit. But, as you're approaching 40 and you're single and you're, fresh out of a divorce, you're kind of like, all right, like, who knows if kids are in the cards for me? Right. And so it really just made me evaluate, like, why am I working so hard? Why am I, establishing myself if life is sort of going to take me on a different path? And I just hadn't picked up my head to notice, to tell you the truth. And so, with that, I just started to self-reflect. I decided to get certified as a coach, which I thought, it'll help me in my career too, because I had a team that I was, working with and developing as well. And I just thought I don't have anything to lose. And so in this process of getting certified as a coach and then just putting myself out there in different ways, I got yoga certified. Like I just really was on this like real, all right, let's toss everything up and
try
just
all the things.
Yeah. Like, why not? I didn't know. Right. It's like, and so in that process, I started to look at life a little bit differently. And so here in my, communications executive role, I looked at value as how can I communicate people's value and how can I help them get the recognition that they deserved. Right. And that always worked, right? You want people to get promoted and recognized, and communications was such a big part of their successes or their recognition. And then, as I'm going on this journey, which was very, emotional based, right? I started to go like, wow, okay, like I just got that person a lot of props, or I just submitted them for an award and they got it over these other people. But on an emotional or energetic level, like, wonder why they got it and these other two people didn't, who are equally qualified and bring some heart and different dynamics. And so I started to just look at value, not just from a, quantifiable sort of criteria standpoint, but I started to go, what is value on that heartfelt connection level? Yeah. And how does it make me feel? And then once I understand that, like what choices and actions are available to me? And so, it was interesting because I knew, like when I was getting my coaching certificate, I was like, okay, like you're going to leave corporate America. But at that point I had 2 mortgages and I was not financially able to leave. And so I kind of had to put together this 5-year exit strategy in order to unwind all of the things that were once important to me that I would have to shift in order to step into this more free, explorative world, right? Right. And so as I'm doing that, I was working with some individuals and talking about a book, and I ended up hiring this woman who helped me. She was my developmental editor for the book Heart Value, and we were talking about, the ideas, and I knew I could write a book based on how to promote yourself and get the credit that you deserved, right? I mean, I had the tactical skills, I had the stories, I had the examples, how do you become more visible? Like those were all things that were completely in my wheelhouse, and I had the credibility, right, to back it up. So, so that would have been an easy book for me to write. But when we would talk, she would like ask me these questions like, okay, well, is that the book you really want to write? Like, do you want to spend, the next 7 years of your life talking about those things? And I kind of was like, well, no, I've been there and done that. Like, I don't want to talk about those things. I want to talk about the things that, light people up. I want to talk about, not just value on that quantifiable data point, logical level. I want people to like drop into their heart and figure out what matters to them and how they want to share their value and how, it makes them feel, and to like pursue that path. And she was like, okay, well then that's the book that you have to write. I was like, okay, that is a scary proposition for me because I didn't feel credible in that way. Right. I mean,
Right.
this was I was passionate about it and I felt called to do it, but certainly I hadn't been living that way for, decades. And I mean, it just, but then the more I really felt, it was like, no, this is the book I'm called to write. And she's right. This is who I want to spend time with. And this is how I want to make a difference in the world and share this perspective, because I think it's needed. And there's not a lot of people talking about value in this way. And so I went ahead and decided to write the book in this very, it's not woo woo. You wouldn't say, like, there's definitely a, business mindset to it, because you can't take like the corporate girl out of me, but
understand.
It is definitely, it is heartfelt, and it's really, there's a connection on an emotional level to aligning with your heart and aligning with your feelings and being intentional about how you choose to move forward in life.
Yeah. And it's, I read, obviously I got lucky enough to be able to read it during like the editing process. And, like as it was, I mean, you had already written it. It was basically, you were just basically polishing it up and, putting the finishing touches on it and that kind of thing. And I just remember I would take it home and read it at night, and my eyes would just get like, these light bulbs start going off in your head, because you're right. We all are trained to basically, our value is what it's worth on a database report, annual review type mindset where, like, I know for me, and I've said this to you a bunch of times, I've told Andrea the same thing. Like, I put all of my value in my job. So like if shit hit the fan at the office, that just destroyed me at home too. Like, I was unable to separate my work life from my home life in the value perspective. Like, I didn't mix the two at home. Like, it wasn't, like I didn't have a crazy personal life and it affected my job, and vice versa. But like, I literally thought all of my value was tied up in my job, and I would work myself to death all of the time, as you well know, because you knew me when I was going through it. But I got nothing out of it. Nothing for myself.
Yeah.
Other than, okay, that's done. What's next? Now I have another 35 deadlines I have to deal with. It was like, okay, pat yourself on the back. You filed that thing, or you finished that, or that client meeting went well, or whatever. But what at the heart level was I actually getting? Nothing.
Yeah.
I just became this sort of hollow shell, for lack of a better phrase, and I was new in the woo-woo world, and you have your woo-woo side too.
Yeah.
But I wasn't able to put them together in the world that I was in. There's really no room for that.
Yeah.
And for me, it was also difficult because as a sensitive, we'd get some of these criminal cases would come in, and I'm just getting all this downloady information, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore, but getting out of it was one thing, but then shifting into being okay with that. I just left my career of 20 years and now I'm not making any, like, I'm not on a salary. I'm just kind of like tossing everything to the wind and just hoping something sticks. Right.
Yeah.
But I was learning in working with you that I don't have to value myself based on my damn job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where, and basically it helped give me permission for myself to enjoy my life for the first time in so many years.
Yes.
It's a totally different headspace that I didn't even know I could get to. Right. Yeah. Like, that's the kind of impact that working with you and reading the book and the podcast had on me. I mean, it really helped me get where I am now. And what I'm doing now is just all the stuff I love, just getting to learn new things and go have fun experiences and meet really neat people and expand my knowledge on an energetic level or, at the spirit level or whatever. But I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't worked for you, but again, everything is in divine timing and the universe always lines everything up perfectly.
Yes.
So
It's
some
so
days you're still
true.
like, is this my life now? Like I'll pinch myself. Like, how did I
Yeah.
go? Because I think I quit. I think it's next week. It'll be 1 year that I left.
Isn't that crazy? How much
Crazy.
change and like just abundance you can like create in a year. Again, if you fully commit to it, if you're
Yeah.
intentional about, not holding back and not stressing over different financial aspects. And,
Right.
we sort of put ourselves in these positions sometimes where it's like, well, only let myself have this much fun because I still
Yes.
have to be responsible, and look, I mean, when I knew I wanted to leave, I was in financial situation where I had to do a 5-year plan, but I also was very energized because I knew that like each small step that I was taking was building and I would gain momentum. And then it's like, where I am now, I have so much fun. And I mean, look at what I get to do. This is fun for me. And my podcast, I love it. I didn't know all of those things were possible. And I didn't have that vision when I left, right? I mean, I just kind of was like, okay, I need to shift gears. I feel called to write a book. I have this message. I had no idea where it was going to take me, but we also have to trust that like our hearts are going to tell us, right? We can feel what's right and we feel what's off, and no one else like can help us with that. We really have to drop into ourselves in order to fully like connect and download and understand, and then follow up with choices and actions that support it.
Yeah. And it's so, I think too, like you said, it has to be very intentional.
Yeah.
You have, and it's not so much that you're setting goals per se, but you're just being more intentional with where you let your headspace live. Like I don't have to think about law anymore. I can think about how much I love the things that I'm doing, or what would I like to get into next. And as soon, you and I both know, as soon as you put that out into the universe is already working with you to bring that to you.
Yes.
But you have to be very intentional about it.
Yeah.
And I think you also hit the nail on the head. And I do this a lot with clients is you start small.
Yeah.
You just bite this stuff off bit by bit, whether it's like you said, whether it's a financial thing or like for people to change their perspective from an energy standpoint, starting to notice how emotions feel and kind of move through the body. Are you focusing on the things around you can't control? It's just basically a whole different mindset. And you have to start thinking more about yourself, which is also very difficult.
Yes.
There's a struggle with the selfishness side of it, I think too. And I think getting past that part and realizing that that's okay is a big deal. And it's small, and I tell people, and you hit it on the head, you do these little small shifts and then they make these massive waves of momentum.
Yeah. Yeah.
And before you even know it, you're like, well, damn.
Yes.
You're just in a totally different space, but you have to trust yourself.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to listen to that inner voice because, growing up, a lot of us were told, oh, no, that's not a real thing. Not my family specifically, but I think, in school and then you go to work and things like that, you kind of learn to shut that out.
Yeah.
So trust your gut almost kind of came like a nuanced joke. But it's actually one of the most important things we can do in a human body.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the more you start making that a priority to listen to that inner voice, the louder it gets.
Yes.
And the more clearly defined your path becomes, or you have a better headspace to be able to clearly define for yourself what you want that to look like.
Yeah. Well, and there's, you send out that energetic vibration, right? So it's like, I can tell you that when I first decided to leave corporate America, and then when I started to write the book, like everyone in my family, they thought I was completely off my rocker, right? I mean, we haven't had one author in the family. We have a lot of contributors and hard workers and, in a variety of careers. So, it spans the gamut. But no one had actually decided and become an author. And so they were sort of like, well, how are you going to do that? And, are you going to make any money on that? And, how are you going to support yourself? You're, no offense, but you're a single girl. It's not, I have a single family income. And so it was just interesting. I just kept saying, like, with confidence, like, yeah, no, I've had those thoughts. Like, it's not like you're telling me anything that hasn't crossed my mind. Like, but I also know that if I don't do this, I will regret it for the rest of my life. And right now, like, I'm making some different choices. Like, I was living up in New York. There's no way I could afford a cost of living of New York and do this. So I relocated to St. Augustine, Florida, right? I mean, I had to make different choices in order to accommodate my dreams. But I was very clear that this was the path that I was supposed to be on. Yeah. And the more I exuded that confidence, then the more my family was like, nah, Mary's going to become an author. Like, I mean, no one knew, including myself, what that meant, right? I mean, it's not like we were all like, we don't actually know any authors, but this is what I'm going to do, So
we're diving headlong into the what if barrel. Let's go.
Yeah. But change is hard, not just for us. Change is hard for anyone who loves us.
Yes.
And so we have to, with confidence, say it to ourselves a million times. And then we have to be willing to share it so that they can all have the opportunity to go, okay, like, let me shift my energy out of fear. Because their initial reaction was fear. It's not like they don't want me to be successful. They're just like, how is she going to do this? Yeah. And so once we help them, like, no, this is like, I don't want to have a regret. Okay. Like, they can get on board. And then before you know it, they're like, how can we support you? But everyone has to have the time to shift their energy, and it doesn't happen overnight. So it is those small incremental shifts. And the more you do it and the more you practice it, the better we get at it. And then the better everyone else goes, like, oh, okay, like, now I can do anything. When I decided to start the podcast, there was less resistance in my loved ones and in just the world, because they're like, yeah, Mary's good at figuring this stuff out. Like, we don't know how she's going to do it, but okay. Like, and sure enough, like, we're coming up on episode 100. Like, I think we're 94 this week. Like, I mean, it's kind of fun how these things just happen. And I just had a good friend who I talked to today, who has a new podcast, and she was like, hey, do you know, I think it's called like Listen Notes or something. She's like, do you know, like, globally you have like 5% engagement or something? I was like, I don't even know what Listen Notes is, but like, cool, like, whatever, And so again, it's like, I'm so grateful that I help one person, and then clearly I help more than one person, because I have I guess it means the people that listen, they come back, each and every week, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So again, we have to, like, trust ourselves that we will figure it out, or the universe will figure it out for us if we're open to receiving, open to giving, open to, just showing up, not in that place of fear, but in just like fierceness. Like, I am going to demand that I have joy in my life, and I'm going to do things that are fun, and I'm going to surround myself with people that I feel emotionally and energetically connected to. And then the rest is just, just icing.
Totally icing. And you also too, you have Value Vault, which is an interesting, crazy, cool process to do. And I actually took a page from your book, and I tell people this, when they start doing spiritual work, I'm like, write down the little shifts, the little successes. I reacted differently to that. I'm like, just start, it's a much smaller scale than what your Value Vault is, but it's a similar, such a brilliant idea. I'm like, because as you're going through this process energetically, you have a list of all the things that you're either reacting to differently or thinking about differently, or you feel better, like whatever it is, like, always celebrate the small things, the little shifts, right? And then write it down. Because then I wish I had done that when I started this whole path. I kind of kicked myself for not having, a Value Vault to reference,
but you can still do it. That's the fun part. You can do it. Yeah.
I do it now, but I think that's important, because your Value Vault is so much tied with a lot of it with business and those kinds of things. But it's such an easy thing to morph for whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a written record of all these different things. And it's an easy reference point to go. And I think it helps people see how far they've come.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And then you also talked about the effects it has on our loved ones and the people around us. And you're right, because I noticed too, when I was starting to shift, everyone around you starts to shift.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily want to sometimes, but it just happens.
Yes.
It's not because you're, standing on a soapbox somewhere pontificating about, the benefits of spirituality to people, but they start noticing your energy is different. They've noticed the shifts in you, the different things that you're doing, the things that you're trying. I mean, if you had told me, we talked about this, if you had told me a year ago that I would be sitting here doing this show in front of a live audience, I would have told you were out of your mind and there's no way in hell. I have the biggest fear of public speaking of all time.
Yeah.
Like, if we were to do this in front of these people as like live humans, I would cry and probably not be able to go out on stage. But again, now I don't necessarily know that to be true. So I think so much of the issue with us too is we automatically limit ourselves.
Yeah.
No, I can't. Not going to happen. And again, that's energy. So if you're putting that out to the universe, then that's what you're going to get back.
Yeah.
So, people start seeing these changes in you and they start seeing the things that you're doing differently. And they're like, oh, well, I want some of that.
Yep.
Whatever that looks like for them.
Yep.
And, your book ties all of that stuff in together, like in this perfect little neat package. And it has, work. It's almost like a workbook too, because you do have exercises throughout it. And it really is an eye-opening experience. I mean, it really gives you a lot of time to self-reflect. And you also get a lot of different, tools, exercises, different things that you can try that appeal to everyone. It's not like you have to be a business person to read this book. It's not about that at the end of the day. It is really about what's, like you said, what lights you up, what sets your soul on fire.
Yeah.
Figure that shit out and then go do it.
Yes.
And it always works out.
Mm-hmm. Somehow it always does. And if nothing else, what I learned for myself is that once I have that personal awareness and then I speak up about it, it doesn't actually even matter like when it happens or if it happens, but just that act of me shifting my energy or me saying, no, this is what I really want. Then all of a sudden it's like on a cellular level, I'm at more peace. It's like I can just reset and go, you know what, and so Erin was talking about the value vault. And so in the book, there's this exercise and I call it invest in your value vault, because we all have so much value, right? I mean, every single person has been through experiences that have made them uniquely valuable to someone, right? I briefly mentioned that I had a miscarriage, and, miscarriages are something that you used to just try and hide. They were a private thing. And one of my good friends, he and his wife had a miscarriage. And, there was just this brief interaction that I had with her. And in that interaction, I was just able to say, hey, I'm so sorry for your loss. I had a miscarriage at 11 weeks. And if you ever want to talk, or if you just need to just have someone to sit with who understands, I'm happy to be there. And she, and our relationship changed for the better. It just in that, literally it was like a 2-minute exchange, and she didn't even say anything in that moment. And I just really expressed empathy, and just opened myself up in that door to say, hey, I'm here and I see you and I understand and I'm sorry. And that was it. I got goosebumps just now as I say it.
Me too.
Yeah. And so, that experience made me realize okay, that experience, for as hard as it was for me, I gained value in it. And that is value that expanded me as a human.
Yeah.
And it also expanded my ability to relate or empathize with another human. And so that goes in my value vault, right? I mean, it's not something we would say is a success, or it's not something that, is an accomplishment or that we would quote unquote celebrate. But nonetheless, it has opened my eyes and given me worldly experience that no one can ever take away from me.
Right.
And so the value vault is your, your successes, your, epic accomplishments, your failures, your hurts, your, expansion experiences. It's whatever happens in the course of the day that all of a sudden, if you take time to reflect, you go like, okay, like that, I'm different, and I'm different in a better way than I could show up if I didn't have that experience. And so that makes me uniquely me, but it also, there's other people that need to hear whatever you experienced and like how that changed you, good, bad, or otherwise, right? And set you on probably a different path. And so the value vault to me is like, it's just one of those cool things. Um, and so I would encourage everyone, and Erin was talking about it. Like, so when I do my value vaults, I also check in with myself and say, like, I moved a ton in my life. Like I moved so much that I could tell movers how to do their job. Like I know how to box and package. I know moving extremely well. I can move furniture by myself that you wouldn't think is humanly possible because I know how to position, or I know how to get something through a door that looks geographically not possible. But and so like it's a skill that people go like, oh, you're really good at that. I'm like, yeah, it's a lot. I've had a lot of experience with moving. But so moving goes in my value vault, right? It is something that I have gained value on. But do I want to do it again? No, I hate moving. Moving sucks. There's absolutely nothing. So there's going to be things that we put in our value vault that, make us uniquely us, and that, again, we can share that value if we want it, if it's going to energize and make us feel good, or we can just, somehow, just acknowledge that we have grown. And I think that's the important thing, is just, everything that we do, every interaction, every experience, we're constantly accruing value. So the older we get, the more value that we have. And I think that that's something that we miss out too, right? Especially in different circles, in corporate America, it's like, that ageism, it occurs because they think that you sort of are losing value at a certain age, but that's so not true. We are constantly gaining value, and we should cherish our own value and cherish the experiences that have made us uniquely us.
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, and I think corporate America is so much a part of the problem with how we view ourselves, because it is always results based. Or, why would I hire someone who's 55 when I can hire someone who's 22 for half the price? So I think a lot of us find ourselves in circles that are constantly devaluing us for the sake of productivity or efficiency or whatever. So it's ingrained in us to not see ourselves as valuable.
Yeah.
So to be able to have something where it helps you kind of learn the opposite of that. Because like you said, it doesn't have to be some promotion, or I got, this kind of raise or whatever. It's like you said, the conversation about, the miscarriage. I know, for me, one of the things I'm learning, especially when I'm doing some of the events and stuff, is like a handler type position. I didn't really know that was a thing. I thought that was a joke. And they're like, no, that's a real thing. I'm like, oh, but anticipating needs. I'm really good at that. That's kind of one of my strong suits. That's where I can bring a lot of value to people. And I think what's interesting within that alone, I used to only do that in anticipation of needs to make myself feel better and make sure that everybody was around me so that I could not have anxiety through the roof. So was I really actually doing those things to help the other person? No. At the end of the day, I was really doing it to make myself feel better.
Yeah.
Which is all kinds of screwed up, because as a helper, you should want to just intrinsically help someone, not for your own benefit. So working through some of that, now I understand that that's a massive strength that I have, but I'm no longer in a place of fear and anxiety about my status or my position with someone. I just do it for the love of the person, right?
Yeah.
Like, we were in Charlotte weeks ago for this event, and we were at the hotel, and they had a quote unquote Starbucks, but the coffee was absolutely horrific. So I went, and found Dunkin' Donuts. So I get up before everybody the next day and just have fresh coffee, brought some donuts. Cause how do you not have donuts? And those kinds of things, or trying to check people in ahead of time, just trying to set the stage for success for the event that I'm at, but no longer doing it because it makes me feel better about myself. And is this person going to be satisfied with the work I'm doing? I'm literally only doing it now to make things easier for them.
Yeah.
Which was a weird shift. It's kind of a weird thing that was a big light bulb moment for me.
Yeah.
And that I kind of learned in reading the book, because I just realized that my definition of value was so misplaced.
Yeah.
And I think that's a pretty big gut check when you start figuring those things out.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to there's a lot of, we always joke about, this path, and, everybody thinks it's all love and light and unicorns and sparkles and glitter and shit, but it's not. There's a lot of uncomfortable self-realization and things that you have to work through if you want to change your life.
Yeah.
Right. And so to have to sit with some of those truths about yourself and things that you have become or started to do to make yourself feel better, it was like, oh no, you know what I mean? But then you at least can own it. You can say, okay, well, this is where this stuff is coming from. And can I shift the perspective of it? Can I make my reactions to things better? Can I do something different? Because I see the value in myself is now different. I don't need the validation from other people as much anymore. As far as what is my value, I know what I bring to the table in most situations, but I had to sit with the reality of what I had been doing for other people all those years, because they weren't really for those other people. It was
heavy, isn't it? Yeah.
Selfish kind of thing, so there's, you have to walk through a lot of that kind of stuff to get to kind of the other side of it, to start feeling better about yourself and living in your truth, like you said, because until then, we're not living in our truth. We're living in someone else's all the time. And it's something that someone else told us to be, or something someone else expected from us. Or maybe we weren't in a safe place growing up, or whatever the reason is, but we're giving our power and our value to someone else all the time.
Yes.
And it's just hard to take it back.
Mm-hmm.
But God, is it worth it?
It is.
It is so worth it.
Yep. And most people, they adjust with us, right? As soon as, again, it goes back to speaking up for ourselves and using our voice, right? Voicing our value. It's there are times now, even still, where I may have some value that people want from me. And they're like, hey, Mare, I know you're really good at this. Can you do X, Y, Z? And I have to decide, because sometimes I'm like, no, that's not value I want to share anymore. But maybe I love that person enough to say, okay, I will do this once, but I want you to understand I'm making an accommodation for you, because this actually no longer brings me joy. This is something that, yes, I am good at, and I will do it because I want you to be successful and I see your potential, but I'm not doing this for me at all, Yes. And this will be the last time. So next time, don't come this way. So it's we have to balance that, setting healthy boundaries, but always, to your point, just being truthful about it, right? And saying exactly where we are and why we're sharing value, because, my mom and I have talked about this, regardless, we have to know the difference, right? We have to know when we're sharing value and it's a choice because it makes us feel good, or when we're sharing value and we don't want to, it makes us cringe, and yet we still do it because we don't want to disappoint someone else. Yes. Or when we share value because it doesn't bring us joy, but we do want to help that other person out. We want to be of service in that situation. And then in that way, we should get, credit, or we should not get, there should be an understanding of the difference there, I guess, more importantly.
God, you so much more eloquently say that than I do.
Some of that was my mom, to tell you the truth. We talk. Moms, they really do, don't they?
Boundaries is a whole nother conversation. That's a thing too. A lot of us really massively struggle with is okay, I'm trying to change my life and I want to do things differently. But I'm a terrible boundary setter. I was one of those people. I didn't have any.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that was. So it was, that was a whole nother life lesson that I realized I was a terrible boundary setter, because that goes back to, people pleasing and, self-validation and all your values tied up in whatever it is that you're doing. But I had to learn to set boundaries, and I still struggle with that to some degree. I think that's something that will be probably a lifelong morphing lesson for me. And I'm okay with that, because after 42 years of doing nothing but that, now I'm trying to keep working on it. But it's something you have to keep working on. I mean, so much of the things here, you can't it's not a one and done.
Yeah. No.
It's a constant metamorphosis of lessons in your life, and in the universe, as we've talked about, the sacred mirror.
Yeah.
Things come around, you think you've dealt with something fully, and then you're presented with another situation. And you're like, oh, well, here we go again. Okay. So now I have a chance to choose again, choose differently.
Yes.
How I react or how I respond. And I think a lot of that ties into boundaries too. But man, setting boundaries is a tough one for a lot of people.
Yes. I have not mastered it. I'll just be for reals there. But again, I'm aware, and I have this practice of self-reflecting a lot. I self-reflect, and if you tune into the podcast, we take each other on wise walks, and those wise walks are all about, asking ourselves these self-reflection questions and just seeing what comes up, right, on an emotional and energetic level. And so, in that process, I am able to gain clarity, I gain awareness, and then, also this act of like metaphorically walking, or literally physically walking, that movement, that forward motion to me, it sort of helps me like gain confidence to go like, you know what? I'm going to tell that person that I'm not going to do it again. And I'm going to do it lovingly. And I'm going to just say it from my heart. And I am going to say it in a way, I hope that they hear me to say that, this does not light me up anymore. I will do it this time. And then I know that it will work out perfectly for you to do it somehow else in the future. Or sometimes, I'm learning to just say, hey, if someone comes with a request, it's like, I know that that's going to work out just perfectly for you. And then just mic drop, nothing. Like, because what I have had a problem with in the past is I am a, solution, go-getter. So there's a problem. I want to solve it. I want to, I can do that easy. Like, here, let me just step in and make that happen. And so a lot of people in my life have gotten used to that, right? I mean, that's like, they struggle and they go, hey, Mare, like, this is what I'm struggling with. And I'm like, oh, here's it here. And let me help you do that, And so I've literally had to self-reflect enough and gain that awareness and gain that confidence in myself to be like, just let it lie. Like, they will come up with a different answer if I don't put myself out there. So sometimes I don't even have to set the boundary. Sometimes the boundary is with me. Like, keep your mouth shut.
I'm the same way. Problem? Oh God, let me just step in and fix it. That's the assistant, paralegal side. But you're right, and that's a tough lesson in itself. Is like, just let it go. Just sideline for a minute. You don't have to step in and be the quarterback every time somebody's shit hits the fan. But it's so hard. That, again, another lesson that's really difficult.
Yeah.
Let people figure their own stuff out. But you do, we do become kind of the problem solvers. I mean, and quick too. You want to be like Johnny on the spot. You want to fix it like right then, and then, move on to the next thing. Cause it's also hard to watch people struggle.
Oh, yes. Yes.
But you have to, like you said, I mean, we're sort of, we get to the point where if we're always the problem solver, the fixer, then you're almost sort of not handicapping people, but you're kind of like, they're sort of fighting with one arm tied behind their back, because if you're fixing everything from them or for them, one day you may move to Europe or something and you're not as easily accessible, but then what have they learned?
Yeah. Well, they're not expanding, right? Yeah, that is exactly. They learn that you will come in and solve for them. And when I look back at my value vault, my most meaningful lessons or my most meaningful growth has come from struggle, right? And I think most people would agree with that, right? It's not My mom loves telling the story of how she would go ice skating and she would come home from ice skating and she would tell her mother, she would go, "Oh, Mom, I didn't fall once." And then my grandmother would say to her, "Well, then I guess you didn't try anything new, did you?" And my mom was like, "Wait a second here." And I thought, how great is that my grandmother wasn't giving her kudos for not falling. She was basically saying, "No, I want to hear about your struggle. I want to hear that you fell because you tried a new turn or twist or whatever it was." And so we always think that falling is a bad thing, right? But falling, when we get back up stronger than we ever started. And maybe we get help, like maybe someone comes along and helps us up. It was so funny. The other day I was donating books, and so I had these suitcases. I had so many books that I was donating at the local library. And so I'm carting these two like gargantuan books, and I have my hatchback open, and the whole car is clearly filled with, either boxes or suitcases of books. And this gentleman, he, kind of paused and he said, "Do you want help?" And I looked at him and I said, "How could I turn down help from a handsome gentleman?" And he laughed, and he was like, "All right, great. Can I start with these?" But, so much in life, I used to pride myself on not accepting help. Like, "Oh no, I can do it myself." And I have this. And
I got this.
Like at some point in my life, I was like, why are you struggling unnecessarily? Right? I mean, take the hand. This guy just asked you. And so anyway, we ended up having a lovely conversation in this process. And it's like, okay, he was meant to help me. We shared about some things that it's like, he was 66. I was talking about, a dear loved one and different things happening in their life and in that same age bracket. And you just think, there are no accidents, right? And when we struggle, we don't have to necessarily struggle alone, but because there will come in support if we need it. But certainly struggle makes us better regardless if we do it by ourselves or if we're alone. And so just acknowledging that expansion or that growth that is possible if we're willing to put ourselves out there in those new terrifying ways sometimes.
Yeah, because vulnerability is tough too. I mean, it's, it's funny when I was learning, on this metaphysical train I've been on, I always thought masculine and feminine energy was male, female. That shows how little I knew. Like when they were talking about using Florida water, you've worked with Florida water. I think I brought it to your house before, but I was like, well, what the hell's so special about Florida tap water? That stuff tastes terrible. Like that's how little I knew, right? Like I didn't know it was like this tried and true anyway. But I think we struggle so hard with masculine, feminine energy. I realize that, masculine is more like the go-getter, the checklist and get things done and, power through things, where feminine is receiving. Right.
Yeah.
I had basically buried, and I think a lot of us do this, that feminine energy. I was only operating in masculine energy because of the job it required it. But then, like you said, you become unwilling to accept help on any level. And like, you almost reward yourself for always saying, "No, I got this by myself. I can do this by myself. I got this, no problem." But that's really dangerous sometimes, and we're missing out on these important connections. Like you said, when you went to take the books, and I can account for the amount of books that Mary has. Andrea's mother would be impressed. Miss Carolyn has the biggest collection of books I've ever seen. You would be in close second. But how many life experiences do we miss out on with someone else by saying, "No, I got this" all the time?
Yeah.
But being vulnerable can be so unsafe feeling for a lot of us, to be able to put yourself out there and say, "No, I can't do this alone." And and I think too, it doesn't even have to be, "I can't do this alone." It can just be, "I don't want to do this alone."
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a ride or die type situation. It can just be, and you can step into that kind of stuff really lightly. Like you said, the small shifts. It doesn't have to be, life's falling apart right now and I don't want to talk about it. It can be something as simple as a guy offered to help me carry my books and saying yes. And so the more you start doing those little things, then before you know it, again, another massive shift happens. And then you find yourself more in a receiving mode.
Yes.
Less in I can do it by myself. I can do all the things. And really all you're doing at the end of the day is wearing yourself out unnecessarily and missing out on a lot of potential amazing connections.
Yes. Yes.
You know?
So I actually hadn't thought about it that way, that in my accepting the help of this stranger, I was in a receiving mode. It hadn't actually occurred to me that I was shifting from maybe, more masculine, my doer, to the feminine and trying to balance that. But that's a very cool concept. And what was interesting was, as the gentleman and I were getting in our separate cars. I mean, he did tell me his name, but I forget it right now. But I mean, again, it's not like we were going to be long lost friends, but he said, thank you. I needed to hear whatever we talked about that day. So again, his day was improved and changed because he stopped and asked if I needed help, and I accepted it. And so so who knows what, energetic shift he was going into or what, but you're right. My energy definitely elevated, and it took so much less time, right? I wasn't as drained because I was able to focus on that relationship instead of the physical activity of lugging and navigating, this donation. And listen, I like some of those books. So it was emotionally charged too. Like, it's like you're giving up some things that you're like, okay, I'm creating space for other things in my life. And that is a priority for me right now. But it's, that's cool. So receiving. Yes, you're right. I'm shifting into a receiving mode.
I'm a terrible receiver. No, let me rephrase. I'm becoming a better receiver. Got to stop saying can't, because that's also something I really have a hard time with. I'm very much almost hyper independent, and we've come a long way, but you miss out. And I think a lot of it too, for us, when you get in that mode of, I can fix it myself, it's for speed.
Yeah.
Or efficiency in your head. But what a beautiful moment you may have missed out on yesterday. Like, how many, you don't know what he needed to hear that for. It's slowing down and receiving. I mean, that's something, Robin, who I've had on the show before, she and I both have always really kind of struggled with receive mode, because we're just doers, fixers. I have a solution, and it's a very hard shift to go from one to the other. But the beauty of that shift is really where a lot of the magic lies for me, because you're really doing work at a soul level at that point. You're really trying to change your perspective, change how you react to things, be more cognizant of the good things in your life and the blessings the universe bestows, or whatever that looks like to you. But you can't do that if you don't accept help, and you can't do that if you don't slow down and take the time. Like, I've started really kind of trying to harp on happiness, right? I think a lot of us feel like happiness is a place that we show up to one day. We just get there one day, park our car in the driveway, and be like, oh, we're happy now, white picket fence house, blah, blah, blah. But we think happiness is a place.
Yeah.
And I think what I've been learning over the last few years, it's not a place, it's a mindset, right? But it's in slowing down and taking the time to find those little moments of joy in your day, no matter how small. My coffee was extra great, or I had a good hair day, or the dog, didn't bark and try to tear the head off the Amazon driver, whatever it is, as dumb as it is, as small as it is, whatever, you start like actively seeking out happy moments. And then before you know it, happy is a place in your head that you now live.
Yeah.
So I just don't think it's but we have to do all of that work, the slowing down and the receiving. And, there's just a lot of shifting that we have to do to get to those places. But we have to just adjust our expectations of ourselves and other people too. Like, we have to be gentle, give ourselves grace, and give ourselves the chance to grow,
Yes. We're constantly evolving, and we absolutely have the freedom to choose again at any point. So, what brought us joy, a couple months ago, it may not still be the same thing. And that's okay. So we just choose again. And we communicate, and we put that vibration out of what we want on a different cellular level. And then we trust that that door will open up, and that will receive it. And then we'll keep going, and we'll keep evolving. But, I love that we're constantly evolving. I love that, the same things. It's, changes happen, and we, change it. It affects everyone differently, right? But I mean, overall, change is a scary thing, because it's new and it can require new muscles or new skills or new adaptability. And so we always might have that trigger of fear, right?
Sure.
And so we have to kind of just go like, okay, like, yes, that was a fear reaction. And no, I'm going to shift and go like, let's embrace it and let's evolve and constantly go forward in that motion. And then see what's possible. Cause that's the kind of fun thing.
That's where the good stuff is. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're right, because I think for change is definitely scary, especially if you're like a control freak, like I am. I'm definitely getting better, but I've always lived. I think that's been the biggest thing I've learned is I basically have always lived my life in fear, not fear that something terrible was going to happen to me, but the unknown, the uncertain. I never used to travel. I didn't go do anything fun. I was very much a fear-based. Okay, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? And I found that before you make your mind up about something, there's like this little space of time where you can stand there in your head and choose again on how you're going to react. Am I going to lead with fear, or can I like reflect enough to just like push through it? Like you have this little gap of time before you form an opinion on something where you can say, okay, am I going to choose fear this time? Or are we going to use the new tools that we have and just kind of like see what happens? And then change becomes less scary.
Yeah.
But it's giving yourself that time to sort of step back before you just charge right in with your fear mentality, which most of us have on some level. I mean, I don't know anyone who doesn't have, fear on some level. But you can still give yourself that little bit of space to adjust your mindset to how am I going to react to this time?
Mm-hmm.
And again, those are those small shifts we're talking about. And the more you give yourself that space to decide to lead with something other than fear, the next thing not too far down the line, that becomes sort of like brushing your teeth.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, no, it's true. And it's funny. There was a period in my life, and I probably developed it when I was younger, but I noticed that fear reaction. And then that almost would drive me to say, okay, I'm not going to let fear dictate my life. I'm not going to be afraid to do something, even if I don't think I'm qualified or if I'm not good enough, because that's ultimately when we have fear, a lot of times that's the trigger, right? Is that we don't think we're good enough. And so it's like, I had an idea to become a ski instructor, and then you go like, oh, I'm probably not good enough. And then I almost would say, okay, now you have to do it, because what's the worst thing that, happens? I don't make it, like I don't make the cut. And then at least I learn what qualifications or what criteria I would need in order to become a ski instructor. And so I would go out for it, and, I happened to make that. And so there's almost, over time, I've developed this muscle of, oh, that like, you're afraid of that. Like, what are you going to do now? Now you're going to have to do it. And whatever happens as a result of it, like I will expand from it. So, I am like a little bit laughing at myself because I'm going to go get certified as a stand-up paddle yoga instructor. And fun, right? So
go. I have one.
You do?
Well, offline. Yeah, I love paddleboard.
Yeah. So
yes.
So you have to be a yoga instructor to get certified as a paddle, board yoga instructor. But so I have that certification, and but so I was looking at the criteria, and I was like, okay, I meet that. Like, I'm gonna have to get certified in CPR and first aid, but I can do that. Like, and then it's like, okay, I haven't been on a paddleboard since probably, I don't know, probably around the pandemic era. You know what I mean? Like, I have an inflatable paddleboard, but with everything that was going on in my life, I just haven't gone out in the water since literally probably, I don't know, 2020. So a little while, but I am like, okay, what's like literally what is the worst thing that's going to happen? I'm going to fall off the board. Like, I'm not going to be able to do some of my poses. Well, then guess what? I'm going to learn what some of my students are going to feel like. So, it's like anything that we do, I will gain empathy for anyone who comes to my yoga class once I decide to teach, stand-up paddle yoga, and that, they're wobbly. It's like, there's not anything in life that if we decide to do it and get over the fear that we're not going to gain value from, right? And so that is something that I am now very mindful of, and that feels right for me. And so I almost now, every time I have that fear-based reaction, I challenge myself to say, no, let's see how we can expand. Like, just do it. Like, what on earth can, what's the worst thing that can happen? And literally, usually it's not as, I mean, there might be some rejection, but not rejection in a way of, you'll never be able to do that. Just like, maybe not right now, but here's what you need to do in order to get to that next level.
That's a really good way of looking at it too. Just, it's almost like a challenge to yourself, but in a fun way, like shifting the fear to a challenge and then figuring out what I need to do to rise to that challenge. And that's an instant shift of the mindset right there. Just looking at it from that perspective, because you've done some wild stuff. Yeah. I mean, you ski, you rock climb, you do yoga, you have a van. We haven't even discussed about your van trip. You've really embraced doing whatever the hell you want to and rising to these different challenges just to see all the things you're capable of doing and how many cool experiences you've had and different, like if I'm at your house, I'm always like, what the hell was she like, I just look at some of the things you have and I'm like, oh my God, she's likes to rock climb. And she, it's always something fun that's like little different pieces of Mary that maybe I didn't really necessarily know about. Like, you've had some pretty amazing life experiences because you do decide to look at fear that way. Yeah,
no, that part's true. And listen, it's gotten me in trouble before, so I'm not going to say that it's always been rosy, but in general, right? Like, I can remember one mountain bike race I signed up for, and I did it purposefully because I was dating a mountain bike dude, and we were supposed to do this race together, and then we broke up, and then I was like, I'm going to do this race regardless, because I had fear, right? Could I do this race without, a male in my life or whatever, or even show up into this, was I good enough? Like, literally, that is always my biggest fear is, am I good enough at something? And so anyway, this race is at this Blue Mountain in New York, and there's some pretty like tough terrain, and I was not as capable as some of my other female counterparts. But anyway, the funny part about this mountain bike race was like, I think it was 14 miles, and it took me 2 hours and 14 minutes. So that is like, I mean, I did more mountain bike push-in, which means I got off the mountain bike and went over this really like tough terrain, because I was not as technical of a rider, but I was convinced that I was going to do it. And anyway, I got to the finish line, and I'm back on my bike and I'm pedaling, and I see the guys, and they're like, congratulations, and they tell me my time, 2 hours and 14 minutes, and I'm like, I was like, yes, and they're totally like, wow, that was the best reaction ever. And I'm like, and so they're all of a sudden, there are all these people that are like, cause I'm just stoked that I did not kill myself. Cause I had practiced that ride once, and I had a really bad endo, and like, I was like blood, like lots of things. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I did not kill myself, and I finished. And then I'm like, hey, am I the last girl in? And they're like, no, not by any means. And I was like, yes. And so like, I'm like stoked, right? So I'm like, yeah. And they're like, and a bunch of girls dropped out. And I was like, yes. So anyway, these guys, like all of a sudden, like all of these people started to be like screaming as I'm riding and like continuing on to like the end where you get off your bike. And they were like, we just, and they're now making a bigger fuss because they're like, we wish the first girl that came in was as energized as you were, like, because she sort of was disappointed in her time. Right. And it was this amazing, like, I can't even, I mean, literally, I don't even know what time she came in, but it was probably like an hour earlier than me, or maybe even more, maybe, so she had this crazy time, but she was disappointed in herself. And the same with the next couple riders that came in. And so here these guys were like, okay, take a lesson from the complete, amateur novice who wasn't there to win. I was never there to win, but I was there to see that it was possible, and that I could, show up, and I could learn something new about myself, and I could meet new people, and that I could finish without killing myself. So
That stuff, the mountain bike is no joke. I mean, I used to watch quite a bit of that myself, and I had one. I had a couple of tumbles. Never did any races. I did it a handful of times, and I'm like, I am, as you know, I am massively clumsy. So the last thing I need to be on is something with two wheels with rocks and tree roots. I mean, I can trip over a carpet that has no bumps. I mean, so, mountain biking wasn't the thing for me. But it's true, because it's just pushing yourself, not to win, but just to see what you can make out of the experience.
Yeah.
And again, that, it also goes back to that happiness. I mean, you may not be happy while you're in it in the moment as you're, climbing up massive mountains, but there's got to be that moment in your head while you're in it and you're like, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Like, I've stepped out of my box and I'm doing this. And
yes,
you can be grateful and so stoked at the end, like you said, because you just finished and you didn't die.
I didn't die. It wasn't the last, competitor. I mean, I for someone who had not done that technical race before, I did better than, and it didn't even matter at that point. I finished. I accomplished what I needed to do for my own heart and for, just my willingness to try things that scare me.
Yeah.
So
and I think that's a hard thing for a lot of people. I mean, I know I've struggled with that a lot too. It's just that, fear of putting yourself out there, trying something new. And I think a lot of it has to do with being okay with sucking at something.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get to just come out the gate as a professional mountain biker your first time on, and being okay with, taking the time you need to learn whatever that skill is, or that new hobby is, or whatever it is. Being able to enjoy the journey of it, the process of it, the mess ups, the failures, quote unquote, or whatever that looks like. And you get to the point where you're where you want to be, and you can look back on it and you're like, wow, that was pretty cool journey.
Yeah. And it's with everything in life, right? I mean, you look at this show and, you talk about how a year ago, you would never envision that you're, supporting Andrea and leading these interviews when she's off in Scotland having so much fun. And
so much fun.
Yeah. And so it's like, that's a new muscle, right? And so the first time you did it probably scary. And then, you keep at it. And the more you keep at it, the more natural and the more conversational everything becomes, and the more confidence you gain. And then you're like, wow, okay, I am good enough. And I was good enough on episode 1 too, but I didn't know it yet. Right. Because you didn't know what you were capable of until you try. And that's the hard part that we all struggle with, right? We don't know what we're capable of until we try. And so we have to be willing to put ourselves out there. And I think on one of my episodes, I talk about, you think about, babies learning to walk. We would never stop a baby from learning to walk after they fall. Like, a baby falls and we just go, we actually put on that positive, you're fine, get back up, go again, because we're like, oh God, if they smell fear in us, they will then have a breakdown and start crying and they won't get back up. But we innately know that the only way that baby is going to learn to walk is if it keeps falling and trying new things and getting that core strength and that balance. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, but we're willing to watch babies struggle and to go through that process and gain their strength and see what they're capable of. And we need to do that as adults too. And we don't do that enough. We expect ourselves to be, walking or running or, awesome out of the gate when we've not exercised that muscle before. And it's ridiculous, right? We should just be like, nah, all right, I'm a newbie. Sweet. It took me 2 hours and 14 minutes to finish a 14-mile, right? I mean, that's it was a long, but hey, I'm never doing it again, by the way, but
that's totally fair.
That race was just, I was like, oh my God. So, but yeah, I would do other mountain bike races maybe, but not that one.
Yeah. So. I know when I had obviously never done one of these kinds of things. And I met Andrea and Roger in last September, I think, first week or two of that. And then about a month later, I think she had a guest who couldn't make it. And so she called me, she's like, do you want to be on the show? And I'm like, what? She's like, I want you to come on the show. And I'm like, are you kidding? Instantly the sweating, the face goes red, the panic sets in, I'm like, you want me to what? You want me to what? Of course, I'm playing cool as a cucumber, because it's Andrea.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I got this, no problem. And I'm talking to my mom and my sister, and I'm freaking out. And my baby sister, Colleen, she lives in Texas. She's like, Erin, they can't see you. And I'm like, oh, that's a really good point. And that was exactly what I needed to hear to get over that like initial hump of fear, right? Of that people seeing me. Like I've always been a person who's like a behind the scenes. Always supporting someone from a desk, usually in an office, well hidden in the back somewhere. And that's where I have always liked to live, So, but it was terrifying. It was doing this as a guest the first time. I was absolutely scared to death, right?
Yeah.
And then, she had asked me, because obviously she travels so much and we're getting into Halloween season. So her schedule just starts getting even crazier. And she was like, well, I just, I'd love for you to step in so I don't have to keep doing reruns, re-airs of previous shows. And I had, for the first time, I had no problem saying yes. But again, the first time, and I got on with Bill and I'm like, deer in headlights, like, am I going to be okay? Am I going to do okay? God, I hope, but again, I felt myself sliding into I don't want to disappoint Andrea or Bill or the guests, or, anyone that watches the show. But then I'm like, I have an amazing opportunity to get on here and talk with people that I love about things that we're all passionate about. So who cares?
Yeah.
If I skip over the words or, like my dog decides he has to pee and I need to stop, I had to put myself, like you said, in a very uncomfortable position to be able to start doing this because this is not where I thought I would be. Like, I didn't think I'd be doing this, standing in. I mean, Andrew's got pretty big shoes to fill. This is, it's no joke.
Yeah.
So it was absolutely terrifying, but also the best thing I could have done because then it forced me to just do it.
Yes.
I did the first one with Robin and, I don't take notes first, right? So Justin happened to be in town, I think, which is rare, but he was like, all right, you ready? You excited? You're hosting your first, episode. And he's like, do you have notes? And I'm like, notes? He's like, did you take notes? And I'm like, no. He said, it's 2 hours that you're going to have to talk. And so for about 5 minutes, I am full on freaking out. Yeah. Right. And I gave myself 5 minutes and then I reined it in and I said, you know what? This is going to be an intuitively led thing. There's a reason I didn't take notes.
Yeah.
It was fine.
Yeah.
But it's just so easy to get back into that, fear mentality of, oh God, and I just realized that I've been given this amazing opportunity and I want to make the most of it. Because sorry, the dog has made an entrance. There he goes.
I like it.
But I've been given this amazing opportunity to step in and help other people learn some stuff, things that you and I have both learned ourselves. I mean, I think that's the beauty so much of this side of things and this path is we're offering back to people the things that we've gone through ourselves.
Yes.
You're not just, grabbing some concept out of the sky that you haven't tried yourself. I mean, you've walked this fire too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, well, this is where the universe wants me to be. And this is what it wants me to do right now. Here we go. So It gets less terrifying each time I do it, for about 30 seconds, there's that just initial rush of, whew, okay, here we go. And then it's fine. Yes. But it's challenging yourself and it's rising to meet that fear and then just, pushing through it, which is not something I would have done a year ago. It would have been a hard no. Yeah. It would have absolutely been a hard no. I never gave myself the space to choose differently.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it's easier to meet the fear, head on. I mean, I was just in Connecticut and doing an investigation and I had not done one of those before as a sensitive. And so at first I was really reluctant to even, say what I was thinking or speak out because of fear of being wrong, Yeah. You're with some of these well-known investigators and even I was with Johnny Zaffis at his museum and I wasn't wanting to say anything. And he's like, Erin, this is your opportunity. He's like, stop being scared. He's like, you just need to trust yourself that what you're picking up is right and just say it. Mm-hmm. And Same with the investigation. It was just people were, they're like pushing you in a loving way to just release the fear. Like, it's okay. And if you don't get it right, who cares?
Right.
But just, I think too, the more you start looking at things from a perspective where you're trying new things, then the people that are supposed to support you through those things also magically appear.
Absolutely. Well, because they want to see what you're capable of too, right?
Yeah.
Like the only way for you to fully appreciate and understand what you're capable of is to put yourself in those uncomfortable situations and uncomfortable, experiences. And then, it's so funny because you were talking about how when you worked in corporate America, you were very content to remain in the shadows, right? And I used to say that too. Like I was the head of communications, but my job was to put everybody else front and center, was to make them look good, to put the spotlight on them. And so I sort of was, again, in the shadows. And so ironically, and I never thought about it like this, but because we have so much heart value to share with this world, and we're starting to really go like, okay, this can make a difference. And I struggled with this. And if I can help someone struggle less, I am willing to now step into the light and show them the way. I'm getting out from the shadows and I'm willing to step into my truth and my authenticity so that someone else can have an easier transition. And how cool is that? Right. Yes. But we still are new in this evolutionary process. And so it's a conscious choice. We have to still keep showing up to say, yes, I'm going to be part of that investigation, and I'm going to be, brave enough to share whatever I perceive or whatever comes intuitively to me, and voice that value and see where it lies and see how people respond. And then also gain awareness and gain value of where, my intuitive gifts really resonated with some, other individuals, or where it made an impact and touch someone, or, you and I were just talking about whatever I was talking about. It's like, okay, we both have chills. Like whatever is happening for us on a physical or emotional or energetic level, people will respond if we're brave enough to go out on a limb and share it.
Yeah. Well, that was some of the, for me, some of the fear. I was lucky enough to be able to go to Connecticut and spend time with two of Andrew's very dear friends, Julie Griffin being one, Tiffany Rice being another. Very gifted mediums in their own right. But again, there's that fear of, oh God, these women have been doing this forever. So I'm going to, if I get it wrong, or if I, and we were driving and Julie was like, she's like, you're here to grow. You're here with people who care. You're here with people with experience. So, she was basically begging you to let yourself go, let yourself, tap in and just spit it out. And just, because it's that almost like stage fright, you're with, people who have been doing this stuff for a very long time. And before, I would have just stayed back there and not tried. I would have been very quiet. I wouldn't have said anything. And it was, I had a moment. I remember being in the, we were investigating a Masonic lodge up in Attleboro. And I just, because there were a couple of things they had asked me to do. And I was like, I'm not ready. And she's looking at me. She's like, just give me a whirl. And about an hour later, it was like, okay, it took me about an hour to get there. Yeah. And then it was fine. But again, it's that being okay with addressing the fear. And I may not be okay with it like right that second, but at least I'm challenging myself to get through it. It may take me a little bit, but that's better than where it would have just been a hard no. And staying like in the background and hiding, Yes. And so, we surround ourselves with people who shift when we start shifting, but then we also, the teachers sort of step in as well, the people that you can trust and lean on and learn from. And that really was probably the highlight for me, was getting, going up there. I got to see a lot of cool stuff and visit a lot of amazing places, but to really get to spend time with these people who have either been in the paranormal field for, like Johnny, 50 years, Julie and Tiffany, and just to be able to absorb knowledge and their support too. I mean, I wasn't expecting that, so I feel like I expanded a lot just by getting to spend time with those people, Ken DaCosta, he's a well-known paranormal investigator up there. And, it was just, I was embraced by all of these people as the shiny new penny or the new kid on the block, whatever you want to call me. And for the first time, it was like, oh, they like me even though, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just, but I wouldn't have been willing to step outside enough to try any of those things.
Yes.
But I was, fully supported and learned a lot and got a lot of amazing advice. But, it's like you said, it's that challenge of trying something new or being the new kid or, you're not a professional going in, and you have to be okay with that. You have to give yourself the grace and the space to grow.
Yep.
It can be really difficult.
But just like you said, if you take that baby analogy, right, you will find the supporters around you that will cheer and say, whether you fall or, you take a couple steps in the right direction, they're there and they're just like encouraging you. And they're like, you know what? And they're also encouraging to say, like, you are probably going to fall on your face at some point. Like, and that's okay too. Right. I mean, because they have struggled in their journey and evolved and have gotten to where they are. Like, they wouldn't have gotten to where they are if they hadn't come up and through the ranks and appreciate like where you're starting out and you're evolving too. Right. So that's kind of, it's such a gift and it's such a blessing to be surrounded in that type of environment. But again, you have these heartfelt, energetic, and emotional connections with these individuals. Yeah. And that's a big difference, I find. When you share that heart value relationship with individuals, there's a purity of heart that says, okay, it's not about ego. There's not a competition thing. No. It's truly just you see each other on that energetic and emotional level. And so many other things are possible, right? Because there's almost a recognition of where each of us are and just who we need to be in order to support the other ones, but not with expectations, just with heart and soul.
Yeah. And I think that also, that goes in with, when you start helping, you start making these connections when you're at a place where you're doing things for yourself in a positive light, not driven by ego, and you're not trying to be involved with people because there's an agenda or something else. Like there's some ulterior motive, right? Like these people line up in your life energetically. And like you said, there's just this connection. There's a synchronicity. I mean, you and I have that. I mean, when we started working together, it was just, I mean, I had a lot to learn. I mean, I didn't know anything about podcasts or book editing or books. I mean, I read books, but I didn't, I'm not an author. But we were able to grow together. So, I learned a shit ton working for you in that, 6 or 7 months on the book and the podcast stuff. I mean, things that are completely and absolutely invaluable and still help me with the stuff I'm doing now. But we had that, like you said, that connection, the want to be supportive of the other person, to cheer each other's successes on, and to, be the shoulder when it's needed. But it would, like you said, there's a purity to those connections, right? It's just, it's easy.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're not fighting for someone's approval. You're not fighting for someone's affection or attention. It's just this pure connection of love at a universe level that you don't find all the time. But I didn't start really finding those until I started changing my life and doing the things that I wanted to do,
Yeah. And communicating that. I mean, I can recall so many different times where I would say, hey, I need this done, but is it something that lights you up or whatever? And you would go, well, I could do it. And I go, no, I won't. No, you're not doing that. Wasn't the response I was looking for. Like, I appreciated that, you were willing, and sometimes I'm like, okay, yeah, that would be great. Or, whatever it was. But, the more important thing for me in this sort of evolution and wanting to grow together was like, no, when I work with someone, I want to work with people that actually have, this heartfelt connection to contributing in that way. And that's value that lights them up. And that's just something that has become extremely important to me. But but there's again, a transparency and a willingness for me to ask, and a willingness for you to say, yeah, now that you ask me, no, actually, that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Or
Because I had never, in all my working years, I had never been given that option.
Yeah.
Ever. If I used to, on occasion, more so often than law than anywhere else, I'd be like, I'm just not comfortable with that. And it was like, too bad was the response. That's your job. No one had ever given me a choice before. And so I was almost befuddled. I remember a couple times I would kind of look at you and be like, you could see my gears going, like, oh, I can actually choose something here. Like it was a concept that was absolutely foreign to me.
Yeah.
But now I look at everything that way.
Yeah.
If there's something I don't like or I don't want to do it, I'll be like, not a big fan of that. I'm more inclined to step in and say, okay, no, this resonates or this doesn't resonate. And I wouldn't have had that without you giving me the option. I just had never had the option before. I didn't know what to do with it,
Yes. Well, and because we have been conditioned to just, muscle through, and then like we almost have to untrain ourselves from that. Right.
Yes.
And that's not always easy. But it's definitely rewarding. And it doesn't mean like, look, there's things like, I hate dealing with bills or things like that, like making some phone calls to chase down, an insurance thing that wasn't processed correctly. Like no one likes to do those things. It's not like we can get out of all responsibilities,
yes.
But there is something very like gratifying about just having that heartfelt understanding of what lights us up and what doesn't. And then also trying to put some, joy into those things that we struggle with, like I don't love that whole, let me look at the finances and figure out, all of my bills and balances and that type of thing. But so it's like, I make Money Mondays like a thing to try and, have some fun with it. And I make sure that I don't put anything else heavy on that day, because I know I need to like create some light and joy. And so everything is about balance, right? So you talk about that whole, the masculine and the feminine, and, the giving and the receiving and the doing and all of these different roles that we take on. It's like, how can we find that ebb and flow with ourselves? And then the more we're true to ourselves, then those relationships that you just encountered, on that investigation, then they become lighter and easier too, because we're showing up as we are, who we are. And then in that safe space that we're creating for ourselves, then other people can vibe off of it and go like, no, you're safe with us too. Yeah. No, go ahead, put it out there, see what you got, like, what do you have to lose? And so people start to feel that curiosity, because then it's curiosity for yourselves and what you're capable for. And then other people can then vibe off that same curiosity and just go like, yeah, I'd like to see what you're capable of. And not in a judgmental or not like I secretly hope you fail, or, it's like there's a genuine interest and support because there is that that emotional and energetic connection.
Well, I think that's a thing, I can't, oh my God, it's already 10:45. That's one of those things too, I think I was really missing out on, was those heartfelt connections, especially with like female friends. I really had kind of put myself on an island. I mean, how close I am to my parents and my sister. And, some of those other people in my life that have been kind of constants, but I didn't really make room for anything else, like I just kind of kept everybody out here. And so then, like you said, when I started feeling safe in these situations and with these people I was meeting, I mean, I have met so many people in this last year that have completely rocked my world, changed my life, given me new insight and really made me grow so much as a person,
Yes.
And I wouldn't have been able to form those friendships before. I wasn't willing to open myself to potentially be hurt. But when I stopped looking at it, I was going to be hurt. It was like, okay, well, this is a new person I can meet and enjoy and learn from.
Yes.
Boom. Changes.
Yes.
Yes. It's been a journey.
It's cool though, isn't it?
It is. Mm-hmm. And so much of that I have to thank you for, because there's so much of the stuff I'm doing now I wouldn't have done without learning what I learned from you.
Oh, you're so sweet. But I feel very blessed to have you in my life. And it's been very cool to go through this and to grow and expand with you. And I mean, even, you talk about the book and you're like, this is my first book. That was my first book too. There's so many things that I turn to you and you're like, Mary, I don't know how to do that. Wow. I don't know what I'm doing either, but you know what? We're going to figure it out.
Figure this shit out.
We're both smart, capable women. And like, what's the worst that happens? I mean,
yeah,
you just we just put one foot in front of the other and we have to laugh at some of the stuff that, we get ourselves into, and we have to be willing to cross the finish line of whatever race we're on, and hopefully we're not racing through life, but and just, be grateful that there are people there that are cheering us on, or be grateful that we didn't, kill ourselves on the race, course, whatever it is, it's we can have fun with it. And I think that's been an important lesson for me, is to not take it all so seriously, to not think that, everything is this, this break point, like that. If something doesn't go according to plan, that it's going to, completely change the course of my life. Instead, it's just going to enhance. I'm going to gain value that I didn't have before. And that's going to make me more, empathetic. It's going to make me more relatable. It's going to make me have value to share in a different way. And then who knows where that's going to bring me? Because it's just all playing out.
Well, and it's, we're souls having a human experience. And so, we're here to, in this meat suit, for lack of a better phrase, to experience all these different things. And so I think it's nice to finally be at a point for myself that I now want those experiences. I'm not shying. I'm not hiding from them. And, I'm not traumatized by my own fear. I think back on some level of all the things I've probably missed out on. And it's like, well, but that's, divine timing. Now I'm where I'm supposed to be. But, it's having those tools to be able to grow and to be able to learn and to give yourself the space to accomplish the things you want to, because we're, and I think that's the other issue. So much of what we live in a black or white, it's either this or it's this.
Yeah.
One or the other. So if what I'm doing, like you said, the mountain bike race, and, a lot of people's headspace, the first woman that finished was disappointed in her time. Well, that's black or white. I didn't win, or I didn't make this time goal, instead of being able to experience it and enjoy the experience as you're in it.
Yeah.
Just being more present and allowing yourself to enjoy those things as they're happening.
Mm-hmm.
Not worrying about the next thing, or I know a lot of that was a time ruiner for me, as I would be somewhere, but I couldn't enjoy it because I was already stressed about driving home, or the traffic, or what was the next thing, or am I going to be on time? Am I going to be late? I didn't get to enjoy anything.
Yeah.
And now I enjoy everything.
Isn't that
Mostly,
a beautiful
I don't like
thing?
Bills either, or cleaning. Cleaning's my least favorite. Now I know I have the link. We have the links in Andrea's page and the Buttercup Brigade page, but tell us where Bill, being the badass producer that he is, that's Mary's website. Where else can we find you on Instagram? Where's the best place to buy the book? What's the best place for us to get the podcast? Give me all the stuff.
Yeah. So the book is called Heart Value. And so that book is on Amazon. Yeah. Heart Value. Thank you for illustrating. And it's feel appreciated in ways that matter and discover your true stride. So, only you can decide how you want to feel appreciated and connected to this world. And so the book is really written as a workbook. And so there are exercises at the end of each chapter so that you can kind of go inward, because much of what I've realized in this adventure of life that we have is, if we don't know what we want and what's calling us, then we are not going to get it. Right. So we have to really drop into our heart and see what is speaking to us in order for us to share that with the world. And then we can call that in. Mm-hmm. And then we can speak our truth and we can voice our value. And so there has to be, we have to start with ourselves and go inward before the outward world can support us in the way that is really, really meaningful. And so I would encourage that. There is an audiobook too. So it's on Audible, it's on Kobo. I actually was just looking today. If you if you are part of a library system. I don't actually know if the ebook is on the library system because I was looking at the audiobook, but that's available. So on Hoopla or Libby.
Okay.
So again, you can go to the library, digitally speaking. And then the podcast is called True Stride. So it's on Apple, Spotify. It's on every single platform out there. It's on Listen Notes and Good Pods. And so True Stride is a podcast that comes out every Thursday. I have solo episodes, and then I also have interview guests from time to time. And, sometimes it's like 14 minutes, sometimes it's 50. We just sort of flow with whatever is topical. But the heart and soul of that podcast is all about taking us on wise walks where we slow down, we check our reality, and we ask ourselves questions. And then those questions, we go inward and again, go like, okay, well, how do I feel about this? Like this week's episode. Oh, this past was like about how sexy is self-reflection. Like, it's amazing to me when you meet different people. Like I find it so, I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. You are a person that goes inward. I like that. That is so freaking
we can vibe here.
It's so sexy. Yeah. I'm getting turned on right now this hour. So anyway, so not every podcast episode is going to talk about sexiness, but I'm just telling you that one does. And then, so I think those are the main channels on Facebook and Instagram. It's like at Mary Tess Rooney, and LinkedIn, same thing. So reach out. Yeah. I like people.
Just a few. Well, I'm so glad that we got to do this, and thank you so much for coming on with me. And I hope that people got to really see the value that you've brought for me and what you have to offer the world. And, I just don't want people to forget that they can choose again and that they need to find the joy in your life. Like allow yourself to go down that weird rabbit hole you've always wanted to try and whatever hobby it is or whatever it is, but definitely find more joy. So I just wanted to thank everybody who joined us tonight. It's been really amazing. And I think Andrea will be back live next week. She gets back from Scotland on Tuesday. Roger will be picking her up in the evening. So we'll report back that she's on the ground safely and she'll have lots of stories to tell. So everybody enjoy the weekend and thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you all for